Hello, everyone. Welcome to yet another episode of Entrepreneur's Kitchen. This is a new episode, and I'm really happy to be hosting Anton Chernikov at the other of the line. Hello, Anton. How are you doing?
Hey, Seda. I'm doing very well. Had a lovely morning today.
Yeah, awesome. What did you do?
Well, I woke up, and since it's COVID, there was no pressure to go into the office. So I went for a run while my wife did some yoga. We hung out with our puppy. I made a lovely coffee where we basically pour Oatly into a pan, heat it up, froth it up. And yeah, we've been doing that for now 4 or 5 months with some premium instant. And it tastes just as good as any cappuccino that you're going to get in the shops or in the coffee houses.
I'm
And
really
yeah,
amazed by that. Yeah, I'm really amazed by that. So you kind of take the Oatly, heat it up, and then
there's this little frother
yeah.
that goes zzz, and it airs the milk and gives it that kind of cappuccino feeling. And you then combine it with the small amount of instant coffee, where you just basically put a little bit of instant, a little bit of hot water, and then the Oatly goes on top, and it tastes delicious. And
Awesome.
it's like 1/10 of the price because you can bulk buy the Oatly, and every Oatly is effectively, I guess, 2 or 3 cups of coffee each. Yeah, it's great. We
Amazing.
love it.
That's really cool. I think you need to make that a product and then, just sell it.
Well, I think, it would probably be just a reseller of Oatly. The barista
Okay.
coffee is just fantastic. And it's vegan. And I think that what we're going to do is just use it for our space upstairs. And anyone that wants a coffee, they can make it themselves. We'll have a cafetiere and then also stock a kind of lifetime supply of Oatly that we can have in our fridges and in our shelves, and then anyone can help themselves. And it's such a fun way to make it as well, because you can make it just the way you want, whatever temperature, however much quantity of milk, and you don't need a loud, expensive barista coffee machine.
Yeah, that's really annoying. And it takes
A
making
lot of
one
space,
coffee takes like so much time. So you already mentioned the word space. But you're not in the space, but on this earth, and you're creating spaces. Let's talk about that. What do you do?
Well, I studied as an architect, and then I went on not to follow the profession, but to set up my own consulting business, where I built websites, logos, got involved in so many different consulting projects and startups, from building tech for visually impaired people, all the way through to student finance, consulting with business schools, and then building apps and websites for all sorts of different companies. And I guess that my road back into real estate came when I went to Burning Man for the first time and stayed in a co-living house in Oakland called Open Door. And that really inspired me. I wanted to create something like this back home. And that led me to Sweden, where I helped open Tech Farm, which is now called K9 Co-Living. And that was a converted hotel where 55 residents lived under one roof in a single community in the center of Stockholm. And that experience of opening and launching that house led me on to the career that I have now. So after launching the house, I started consulting with a lot of large housing developers, exploring how they use technology and build community and a sense of place within their large developments. And that road taught me a lot and eventually led me to what I'm doing now. So I'm a creative director and partner in a real estate firm called Alive Places. And what we do is buy land and develop large mixed-use apartment blocks. And then what's different is we don't just build and sell, we also manage, operate those properties for the long term. So we're trying to bring some of that co-living magic into mainstream housing. And yeah, we're operating in London. We have several sites. Yeah, it's going to be an exciting journey over the next 5 to 10 years as we look to build thousands of homes for people in a more sustainable and community-centric way.
So is that still affordable? I mean, if you, it looks like you always have this trade-off. Either you have a sustainable and really good-looking and natural type of living, which looks like a very almost posh thing to do nowadays, versus, being this Bauhaus kind of on top of each other and, cell after cell after cell.
So there's a couple of ways. Obviously, affordability is incredibly relative, and London is by no means an affordable place to live. However, I think the way that the industry understands affordability is housing shouldn't be more than 40% of your salary, right? The second you're spending 50, 60, 70% of your salary on housing, then it is no longer affordable. And what we need to do is make sure that we can maintain a high standard and quality of living space without it being too expensive or relatively expensive to the people that need to live and work in the city. So that's the first point. I think the second aspect is it is possible to make really, really high quality, high rise accommodation. However, it's rarely done. And the reason for that is because, especially in London and many other cities, the way the business model of real estate development has worked is that it's very short term. Everything is built around securing planning permission and then selling to kind of overseas investors off plan, building as quick as possible and selling and then exiting the project. So the developer had no incentive to really create long-term value, to create a great living experience. In funny way, in real estate, it's one of the only industries where the end customer actually doesn't really matter at all. What's much more important isn't the person living in the buildings, but it's the person that's buying the apartments as an investment vehicle. Okay. So that's been the model predominantly in London for the last 10, 15 years. Thankfully, regulation has changed to increase taxes for overseas buyers. And also the market has become so saturated with unlivable, overpriced housing that something has to give. And so London has introduced a 35% affordable quota, where 35% of all housing that is given approval needs to be affordable. And then that affordable housing is then broken up into social rent and then intermediate rent, so that all developments will have to provide for all income levels, which is a great thing. But what it's doing is it's creating a lot of expense for the traditional model of build and sell, because traditional build to sell developers, they don't make any money from affordable housing. They actually lose money building those affordable units. Whereas build to rent, we have a different approach. We're not interested in selling the properties quickly off plan to international investors. What we're interested in is creating a really high quality, reliable income stream for institutional funds, pension funds, which ultimately buy our developments once they're complete and once they're operational. So we're interested in quality of income, not in selling an asset. What that means is suddenly all those things like sustainability, living experience, community, placemaking, quality, durable design, sustainable materials, that all starts to matter so much more. Because we are tied to this building, right? We're the ones that are going to be operating, and our success and failure is going to be determined by how well those buildings and those communities perform. And so therefore we can put the well-being of our residents and the communities at the heart of our business model. We can invest in materials and interiors and also architecture that will make people want to live with us long term. So traditionally renting's been this thing that has been seen as a secondary option to buying, right? Something that you do for a few years while you can save enough money to buy. I think that's changing. Firstly, because house prices are just way too high. People can't afford it. But also because renting provides a better quality of life, more flexibility.
And also, when you think about it, if you were to buy a house, let's say in Salzburg, this is where we live, the prices are so high that a normal person would be like paying off for almost 30 years. Exactly. And who lives in a place for 30 years nowadays, right? Yeah.
So I think we're going to see, and we're already seeing this, a huge shift towards rental accommodation that is institutionally backed. So it's not private landlords that buy a few properties, do them up and rent them out. It's professionally run, large rental developments that are designed for purpose, which is for people to rent and live in community. And suddenly that opens the door to so many really exciting things, because you effectively have a concierge, you have a local property management team that's not this kind of faceless landlord, but is actually a really friendly, entrepreneurial, creative team of people that wants to help you connect with your neighbors, access relevant services, and make your life a little bit easier and better every day. And then on top of that, we can really think about the amenity spaces in a very different way to traditional landlords. Whereas traditional landlords would just slice up the ground floor spaces and then sell them off to businesses that would take those leases. What we want to do is we want to actually have control and use those spaces ourselves. So, and this is where House of Transformation comes in as well, where we're looking to design amenity spaces and retail spaces that are constantly evolving and changing, that are as flexible and multi-use as possible, right? It doesn't make sense that you have offices that are only used during working hours and then empty on evenings and weekends. Shops are pretty much dead, and restaurants are dead during working hours, and then only make money in those kind of specific hours where people go out to dinner or maybe on a Sunday for brunch. And that's unsustainable, because those restaurants have to pay full rent for 24/7 use. Same with the offices. And more people are beginning to question taking on these big leases. And I think this opens the door for a new model, which is this flexible multi-use model.
I think more and more people are also questioning what we're doing in the kitchen, because it's been almost 12 minutes and we haven't spoken about the food yet. So what do you have on your table?
So I have been buying watermelon pretty much every week, sometimes even 2 watermelons, and I have a slice of watermelon every morning and then every evening. It's one of my favorite foods. It's so refreshing. Actually, when my mum was pregnant with me and my twin brother, she would eat this stuff nonstop, and maybe this passed on to us. So it's a wonderful treat, and it's the season of watermelons. So, and they're so cheap because it's in season. So I've been bulk buying watermelon.
Excellent. So here, cheers to your watermelon. I have something that's very Turkish. So we have some yogurt. This is messy. And then, do you know this Turkish drink called ayran?
No, I don't.
So I'm making an ayran with a twist. So you need a yogurt, you need water, which goes into there. See? And then I will be mixing a little. And you need some salt. It's one of the best drinks ever, especially when you're, having these bike tours you were talking about. And then you just mix with this nice thing. Because this is ayran with a twist, I also put peppermint in it. Dried peppermint. It's the best ever. I'm going to make it. I'm going to drink it. You will see it, but you won't taste it. So this is the good thing at the Entrepreneur's Kitchen. Everybody gets to eat their food. And you're not like guinea pig, trying to eat other people's food and like, I'm not sure. Yeah, well, I will be mixing while you're talking. This is why I'm going to ask you a question. I was reading about you and about your background, and it looks like you also had a twist at some moment in your life through a very unusual experience. And I really want to kind of dig a little deeper in there because, you were probably not an unconscious person about how you lived your life before, etc. I'm not assuming that. But why do you think those experiences change us so much that we suddenly start seeing things in such a different light? Maybe first let's talk about what happened.
Yeah.
I don't want to.
I'm guessing you're referring to meningitis and my near-death experience. Well, it took place just over 4 years ago, and it was a freak situation, almost like being struck by lightning. I was in Costa Rica, I caught an ear infection, and then meningitis kind of somehow latched onto that ear infection and started eating my brain. And I was unconscious for 10 days in the ICU. And I only really understand what happened through the stories of my family. And what I did is I then interviewed all of my family members that were there and anyone else that was around, and tried to get the most complete story of what happened. Because I only remember waking up 10 days and then a couple of days of being autistic and not really emotionally comprehending what had happened, and then regaining movement in my left side of my body, and then regaining the emotion. And thankfully, within a month, I was out of hospital and able to then come back to life with really no trace of the illness at all. And bacterial meningitis is even more deadly than viral meningitis. So it's a very strange event. And I described it as being struck by lightning twice. One strike was bad, completely ridiculous and unheard of in medicine. And the other strike was lucky because I walked away without a trace, not even any hearing loss, which is unbelievable. So I guess the first step is really to get back into physical health. You know, if you're lying in a hospital bed for a month, you lose all your muscles, all your training, you have rashes everywhere. So it's just the physical level. Then I wanted to kind of get back into my day-to-day life. I returned to London. I had this project already scheduled to do a gathering in Greece for 40, 50 people to explore kind of how we redesign our world for the better. And, it was kind of a very, now I think back, quite an abstract, unfocused theme. But it was a beautiful place and really interesting people. So it was actually a great event and it taught me a lot. So I put a lot of focus onto that just to try and stay positive. And but I still felt that I was a little bit lost for a while. And it was really the opportunity to go to Sweden that was part of my healing. So it gave me a really good stability. I could build up my savings once again that I'd eaten into from basically 6 months, completely unable to do anything. Not because, it was also because I had deliberately stopped doing paid projects, because I built up some really good savings in kind of September the year before. And then I'd taken this time to kind of develop the event and do my own reading and research. And actually February, March was the time when I was going to get back into earning money again. And then this happened. And it was June, July. And it was really fortunate that I got introduced to this investor that invested into this co-living. And for me, that was a very difficult phase in my life. And co-living really helped because it provided a natural way for me to kind of start again, build new relationships, get a new direction for my career, away from just consulting with startups and kind of doing very scattergun projects to really focusing on property and real estate, which is always my core passion and interest. And the co-living experience really helped. And then it was getting back into dance, having a lot of romances, a year of non-stop romances and travels and festivals. And I think that in many ways, it took me a good year to get back to feeling myself again. And I think that I wouldn't say I had any kind of biblical transformational experience. I didn't have any visions or speak to God or anything like that.
No light at the end of the tunnel.
But I did get a really strong feeling that I'd spent my 20s experimenting, trying a lot of things out, but I wanted my 30s to be about focusing in, not just starting lots of projects and jumping between many, many different things, but to really pick what I really wanted to do and how I wanted to do it, and then focus. I wanted to move from being a lone wolf in my life and in my career to actually starting to make commitment in my relationships and also in my career. And it was important to move back to the UK and London, which is really my home, and to join a team where I was working with some really experienced people that were capable of raising hundreds of millions of pounds to do large scale development. And also this is the country and the city that I know. And that's where I want to be. It's kind of all worked out really well. I'm very excited really awesome. For what's to come.
Yeah, well, let's talk about hot spaces a little bit. House of Transformation is the abbreviation. And you already spoke about this multi-purpose living and architecture. You know, a couple of days ago, I had a very funny moment because we have two kids. One of them is 9, 2 girls, and the other one is 2 years old. And the 9-year-old girl, I mean, we have a lot of space, but we have 2 kids in one room. So our elder daughter, she was like, I want to have my own room. I can't be in this room with this little person who is very annoying. But that would mean for us in, you know, these little, you know, all the houses are cut in the same way, and, you know, you have these quadrant rooms. And so wouldn't it be awesome that you could just turn one room in 2 rooms with just a, you know, turn of a hand, and you don't have to really bring in construction workers, etc. So let's talk about these concepts of evolving, you know, space.
So both in my day job with Alive Places, but also in my side projects, I'm really exploring this idea of multi-use space and creating both structures, but also furniture that can be modularized and moved around, and also constantly repaired, replenished, reused, so that you're not building something that will ultimately be thrown away in 5-6 years, or potentially even 1 or 2 years. And a lot of these furniture companies, they sell you cheap but very poorly made furniture that ultimately will be unusable in a few years. So you have to buy the next one and the next one. It's the same as fast fashion. So we've been looking at ways of creating interior designs that are built to last, and also that are super flexible and adaptable. And I also think that there is a shift now away from traditional office models, where companies will take on large commitments or large leases with co-working spaces or office providers. I think now a lot more companies are thinking of downsizing, and what they're looking for isn't just a standard office that looks just like everyone else. They're looking for a unique space that will inspire their people, that will spark collaboration, where they can invite clients, and where they can do particular trainings or kind of gatherings or hackathons, the things that you need to be in the same room to do. And that's a very different space to people commuting in just to turn on their laptop, jump on the internet, and then distract everyone around them with their loud phone calls and their Zoom calls. You know, we don't need to have an office to work alone together. We need an office to meet, socialize, create together, interact, and then we can go and work perfectly fine at home with a great internet connection and a wonderful, affordable coffee, and no distractions in our pajamas. So this acceleration that COVID has created of working from home, I think is a massive opportunity to redesign how we think of office, but also commercial retail space.
Mm.
Especially since a lot of these businesses have been hit hard with COVID. They've been forced to close down. A lot of leases are being cancelled or renegotiated. So this presents a massive opportunity to rethink the model and start to blend the asset classes together, and potentially even create more and more hybrids of co-living, co-working, co-housing, co-everything spaces.
Yeah.
And the key is to really think through, just like you would think through the user experience of an app, to think through the user experience of a space 24/7. So you draw out a big calendar, Monday to Sunday, 0 hours to 0 hours. And then you start blocking out, okay, well, what is most likely to happen during these hours? What is most likely to happen during these hours?
But tell
Once
me,
you
what
slice that
would
out,
happen in an office space between like 11 o'clock in the evening and 5 o'clock in the morning?
well, I mean, potentially you could have guest speakers spending the night, because the next morning they're going to be giving a presentation, or consultants that rather than them paying for an expensive hotel, maybe they can spend the night. Equally, what you could have is a situation where there is a late night event, let's say, and then you want to stay until 1 or 2 a.m. because you live around the corner and you want to have a lovely dinner and a deep conversation. Equally, in the morning there could be yoga or a meditation or a HIIT class, and then you could have a product launch on a Sunday, or a cooking class, or what we were exploring as well with Somophilia and you guys is creating hybrid events that exist both online and offline, where actually there's not so many people in the space, but because we've got all the camera equipment, live streaming equipment, projectors, we can create a really high quality digital content that can then be experienced by people around the world. And so you could have a physical presence, and if everything is set up for you with the cameras, the equipment, then actually the reach of your event could be much further than the people that actually can fit into the space.
I think that's a great idea.
So basically, ultimately, House of Transformation is kind of what it says. It's this space to experiment with how we bring people together and how we do events, and also how we explore a timeshare model, where rather than one company renting a space just for themselves, they buy a timeshare. It could be a one-off booking for an event or a workshop or a meeting or a day, but equally they could start becoming members of the space and saying, actually, we want to book out every Tuesday afternoon or every Wednesday morning in perpetuity, and then we're happy to pay $1,000 or $1,500 a month. And that's maybe a third, if not a quarter, of the price that they would be paying for anything close to this. Probably not even like a much smaller, less interesting, less inspiring space. That's just great. For the privilege of having a place that they could always use, but actually in reality they never do. So I think there's a real opportunity to question everything when it comes to commercial real estate, and to experiment with new blended mixed-use models. And what we think of upstairs is a showroom, really, where we can take people, show how we can turn, an average office space into a real immersive experience for people, where we've taken this kind of idea of not just creating a flexible space, but also a sustainable and memorable space. And so we had this concept of fusing a garden sanctuary with loads of plants that then transforms into an immersive theatre with beautiful smart lighting and projection and really thoughtful acoustics as well. And hopefully then that space can really take people out of the normal frame of an event space or a meeting space, and can get them to engage and relate in a different way. And so this fusion of theatre and food and light and sound into a space, I think, is very exciting to play with.
Absolutely, and I'm really, really looking forward for our gang to enjoy that space soon in September. Now we're almost at the end, so we now have to now it comes to my favorite part, the joke part. Yes. The Entrepreneur's Kitchen is really famous for these. We even have people who just tune in for the jokes and then tune out again.
Okay.
Yeah, because they want to see how hilarious we are. So, what is your joke?
Cool. So it's more of a riddle joke.
Ah,
So what is the plant that grows in our hands?
I don't know.
It's a palm tree.
Oh, I would say hand grenade, but I was like, is grenade a plant?
So there we go.
Awesome. I have an architect joke actually.
Go for it.
Since
Go
you're
for
an architect, why was the architect wearing 2 jackets while putting on paint?
I don't know why.
It said, put on 2 coats.
Ah, yes.
Not funny? You're not
No, no. I
laughing?
mean,
No.
yes.
You're like, I have never seen an architect with
Yeah,
2
yeah.
jackets.
2 jackets and coats of paint and coat. Yeah, that's true.
Thank you,
Nice.
Anton, for making me look really not funny with my joke, but I'm used to that, so
That's okay.
no worries.
Cool.
Well, I want to thank you so much for joining Entrepreneur's Kitchen. I think this
Yeah.
was really, really interesting, questioning how we live, how we create together, how we can especially create spaces that are not only, you know, as you just mentioned, alone spaces where we work alone, but really come together to, you know, to really be one, to be whole, and to be connected not only to our environment but also to other people, and in a sustainable way. I think that's really, really a game-changing idea, and I'm looking forward to experiencing with what you come up with. And I think I have a lot of people who would love to know what your opinion would be on their spaces. So I might
Yes.
be just connecting you
Yeah.
to all sorts of people.
Yeah,
Thank
so
you, Anton,
in
again.
terms of websites for people, if you want to find out more, go to www.hotspaces.org to learn more about House of Transformation. And then if you want to connect with me, go to www.exponentials.co.uk. So those are the best places to find me.
Absolutely. Anton Chernikov was my guest. Thank you guys for tuning in to Entrepreneur's Kitchen once again. And next week on Friday, I'm going to have a new guest at the show. Her name is Katrin Pape, and she is changing the future of work and remote work. So you definitely want to tune in for that one too. Looking forward to seeing you again soon and searching for the record button to stop. Good night. Bye.